I'm Tony.
And I'm Steven.
And we're here in the Blue Sky Lab, and we're joined by Marisa Porto.
I'm the night chair in local news. I focus my time and attention on the intersection between journalism and sustainability and innovation. The last few years, I've been studying AI and how it's changing the business model.
AI is a huge topic in the realm of innovation and creating content. Today, we really want to focus on the creative applications of AI.
There's an argument over, is generative or AI art really art? Now, all of a sudden, people are like, oh, I can make things really quickly. They don't have to have all that talent or skill that they needed before.
I think there are a lot of ethical implications of what we're doing with AI. They're really twofold. The first is, what is AI using? And the second real issue is, what's the point there at which it becomes a creative endeavor?
That level of uncertainty is famously bad for business. What can be done to remove that gray area and kind of provide some clear guidance for folks?
I think we're going to have to see the courts decide. We're going to have to see precedent. Once we have precedent, then we can make policies and kind of move these forwards, and businesses will be able to know where they can operate. That's going to take time. So I think we're going to see is businesses are going to start and businesses are going to fail. Businesses are going to get acquired, and things are all going to happen as these things happen. And technology is going to change faster than policy, and that always has happened, right? That throughout history, technology moves faster than policy, and so we have to figure this out. And hopefully, we're driven by good ethical standards, and we follow those things. But when we talk about like energy consumption and impacts on the environment, it's hard for someone to know when they're sitting there typing that prompt or building that image, what is the impact of that? And is there an ethical concern that I even need to be thinking about because I'm just trying to do my job a little bit faster?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, we focused a lot on the legal and ethical side of this, but there's a third leg to that stool, and that's the environmental impact of, running these large AI models. Marissa, from your perspective, both sort of incorporating the value that can be leveraged by these models weighed against the impact that they are having on the environment in a very real way. What's your take on how folks navigate that ethical question?
Right. I mean, that is a very good question. And I would say, you really have to think about whether you want to use this tool because you know that it's going to take away some water. It's going to cause some, a lot of energy use. All of those things over time have an effect on the planet, as we know. I think one of the things we have to think about is transparency. Transparency in business and how it's used in business, right? Because there is that gray area. So maybe by virtue of telling people how we're doing what we're doing, we can help to build some sort of guidelines as we go. And transparency from an environmental standpoint. How much does this program use doing this thing? And is it worth it for you when you see that, some kind of, something flash across the screen that says, if you do this, you're going to use X amount of water and X amount of energy, and is it worth it?
Yeah. There's a great Washington Post article from September of last year that really goes in and explains it in a tangible way for people to understand the number of gallons and the amount of energy. And they put and do some great comparisons there that help people to understand that. And so I think as we want to look towards that future, like maybe there's a plugin that you can add if you want to be more, environmentally conscious, that like this query you just wrote, if you hit enter, is going to have this impact, right? Maybe those types of iterations can be helpful, but also I think we're going to have to see the companies that make this, make them more environmentally conscious, make them where they consume less energy and do things better, more efficiently. And I think we have to see that over time before we see a significant impact.
Right. And I think you'll get people who, are investors who want to invest in environmentally sustainable companies, and they want to see that, and they'll be more willing to, conduct business, buy stocks, do all the things that, investors who have an environmental bent and social bent want to do. So it's a really good opportunity for business to sort of take a lead.
Is there enough of an incentive for that to happen naturally, or is that where regulation could step in and accelerate that?
I would argue yes. I think it is in the business's best interest to make the most efficient systems possible. Yes, they know they're consuming a lot of energy because they get a power bill, right? And they're paying the money on that. And so they know, so the more efficient models they can make. And we saw this in the last versions of ChatGPT where they're going to control which model that you're going to be able to select. They're going to choose a model for you because it's in their financial best interest to choose the most efficient model, right? And so I think what we will see is like just good business practices will lead to a better, more environmentally sustainable version of this. And I think it will actually happen faster than any regulation ever could.
And I think people will hold businesses to account, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of the ways. It's not a governmental way, but people do eventually hold businesses to account if they feel like something is going off the rails a little bit, right?
So, obviously this is a super nuanced topic and a lot of ground that we're covering here. But, overall, from your perspective in local media, where are we going? Are we moving in the right direction with regards to how we look at artificial intelligence's impact on our everyday lives?
I think AI is going to be the thing that revolutionizes us, right? As we've had the industrial revolution, we've had the technological revolution. This is the next step in that, and we'll see it. We'll see it continue to grow and continue to expand, not just in the States but all around the world. And as we do that, it's incumbent upon us to be thoughtful about how we legislate it, ethical about how we use it, and think about what the long-term ramifications are of this technology to humanity, right? And to democracy, because there is a lot of opportunity for this to go the wrong way, which is why it's important to have thoughtful leaders in every area to help us move forward with this.
And I think we're getting to a place where it just is a part of business. It's a part of going to school. It's a part, it's an expectation. And so I had a student last semester in my emerging technologies class who had a philosophical objection to using AI in the class. And I'm like, I don't know how you're actually going to survive, not just my class, but in the real world, because it is becoming such a level, it's table stakes at this point, right? Like this is how business is getting done. It's how if you're going to compete, you're going to have to be able to use it. And so we've got to find ways to do that well. But I think there's an expectation that now in business, you just have to be able to do it. And that this is just another tool that you have at your arsenal.
And, I think we're seeing that play out with moves like Shopify executives now famously saying that if you're a senior director and you want to increase headcount, you have to prove on paper that AI can't help reduce that, manpower problem. Are we likely to see more of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. I think, you're seeing companies all the time are always trying to optimize. And so this is the next new tool for optimization, right? And so putting in policies like that, I think we're going to continue to see more and more. And it won't even be a headline anymore. It'll just be, this is just the way business is getting done by next year.
Well, I hope it'll be a headline. Sorry, let me just jump in here and say, I hope it'll be a headline. Because the World Economic Forum has said that this will continue to happen, right? There'll be companies who continue to use AI to consolidate in the marketplace, to find other ways to do things more efficiently. But I also think as people who are ethical in business, one of the things that we need to say is, how responsible are we for retraining the people who are in our own companies to take the jobs of the future when it comes to AI? Because we know research has shown us that it costs more to bring new people in than it does to retrain the people you already have. So I would say one of the things I will hope that businesses think about is not just about how to consolidate their own and make their own organizations more efficient, but how do we train the people we have to be that next generation of people who continue to work for us, because we already know they like working with us. We have their loyalty, but to continue to work with us in what we are going to become down the road. And that's what I would hope for as well.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think, if Uber institutes autonomous vehicles, is it their responsibility to retrain those drivers to a new skill to do something else? right? Is that the government's responsibility? Who's responsible for that, right? Because it's going to happen. Like, we know that's coming. We know that's the direction of the company. We know what they're planning on doing. And so, like, where do we do that? Like, like, I don't have a good answer. I'm just saying, like, this is going to happen. What are we going to do as a society? If we lose so many drivers, that is one of the major occupations of people who are the breadwinner for their homes, are drivers. Lots of different types, not just Uber drivers, right? But if that is where they're getting their money, who's responsible for helping to train them and finding and building programs to do that?
I mean, I think the answer to that question is everyone, right? Companies are responsible for looking at their own employees. The government's responsible for looking at large industry sections and saying, should we do something in this area, right? And then human beings are just responsible, like getting up every day and being good human beings and saying, how do I help others who are going through this change? I mean, I do feel like it's a societal problem, and it's not just in the United States. So it's globally, and we have an obligation and a responsibility as global citizens and as American citizens to say, if this change is coming, how do we address it as a society? Because we are humans ultimately, and it is our responsibility. Is it an ethical way to do business? And I think that's, for me, I want to get up in the morning and look myself in the mirror and know I did the right thing by the company and also by the people who are working there.
It's a great word. It's good.
So, if we look towards the future and look at an environment where some of these jobs are being done by, AI agents that are increasingly no longer viewed as computer programs, but as colleagues, is there a future in which there is a smaller workforce, or is the pace of growth fast enough to account for that additional labor capacity?
When we consult with companies, a lot of the times I'm telling them, we're going to optimize things in the back of the house so you can spend more time and effort to engage with your customers, right? And that is the best case, and that's what we want to happen. But we know when when you're looking at the ROI on most automated projects and you're trying to use AI and robotics to do this, you're also looking at a cost savings in labor. And so we can't ignore that fact. So I think we're at a point where that's going to happen. We know that's going to happen. What we want companies to do is to do it smartly, responsibly, and hopefully make for a better customer experience, right? And they find ways that our employees can engage with those customers in new ways.
So, we've talked at a very high level about AI art, and the future impact of automation on the workforce. But to really hone in on kind of some practical advice for folks, right? What are some places where AI is, ethical and legal to use? And what are some examples of where it might not be? I guess I can give you one to start off. If I maintain a blog, right, and I like having cool images in my blog, using AI to generate images for like a local news blog. Good or bad, or somewhere in between?
No, somewhere. I would say it depends, right? And it depends on. I tell my students all the time, it's okay to use AI in this class. You have to say how you're going to use it. You have to show how you're going to use it, and you have to cite how it's used, right? So you can't just prompt something and say, "Can you put together an image of?" Right? I need to know, where did that information come from that you used to put that image together, right? Was there who provided that content? Because that's the other thing, is there's bias going into these systems. So it isn't just it's copyrighted information, it's biased information. You don't know where that information comes from. So understanding where the information comes from, in my mind, is the bottom line about what you first have to do, which is fine, send the prompt. Then when it doesn't give you a citation, say, where did the citation come from? And then look at the citation. Is the citation, because there's also, we also know sometimes it's wrong, sometimes it feeds you inaccurate information. Look at the citation and then find out whether the citation is accurate or not. I mean, just because it's there doesn't mean we lose our obligation to check the information that we're using, or the in your case that you're sharing with us, a content that you're using to build what you need to build for your blog. So.
Now, Stephen, from a business's perspective, right, is that citation, still enough to really do justice if it's citing a data set that might contain 500,000 images?
I mean, what she said is, it depends, right? And it does. And so I would argue that we need to have principle-based decisions, right? So when you have a situation, you use a principle like the one I like to use is that technology, in this case AI, technology is in its proper place when it helps me to grow, learn, get better, right? Helps our business to grow, help me to get better, help me to learn. That's a great use of technology. But if it helps me to cheat, steal, do something I'm not supposed to do, then it's not in its proper place, right? And so what I want to do is that when I'm using any technology is it helping me to get better and to grow and do these things without stealing or taking advantage of somebody else, right? And so those are the questions we have to ask with every prompt we write.
So maybe is it okay to use it as an early stage prototyping tool that is later then maybe cleaned up or recreated by a graphic designer as a replacement for something like 99 Designs?
Yeah, and I'm going to say it depends, right? Like it's always this thing of like, I think you're at a point where it's like, if it helps me to communicate that idea that then turns into something very unique, then that's a great use case. But it helps me to make a sale because I was able to communicate that idea to a client very quickly, but then we actually go build the real version later. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually really helpful. But I think if it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to use all of this AI and I'm just going to resell this AI, I think now all of a sudden I'm building off somebody else's shoulders that they're not getting compensated for. And so I feel like that's part of that, is that's in the stealing category for me. Right. And so I think we all have those different questions we've got to ask.
Marissa, is there any other guidance that you would give to creatives and folks that are using this technology on how to do it ethically and how to do it responsibly?
I would say transparency, 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 right? I mean, if you want to really be ethical in your use of any kind of AI tool, it is tell people what you did and tell people why you did it and tell people how you did it. And then it's up to people to judge whether they want to continue to, read your work or watch whatever your video is, or, see whatever it is you're producing or listen to whatever it is you're producing. That puts on the audience the decision-making process. But you have done your job as a human being who needs to think about the ethics of what we do every day.
Stephen, is there anything you'd like to add?
I would say that's exactly right. And this is no different than what we've done in the media world for years, what we have done in using open source code. Like, you need to document and attribute what you've done. And so I think we keep those same concepts, we keep those same principles. We're going to be better off than if we just wait and hope that business is going to figure it out or the government's going to figure it out. We've got to be ethical people as we grow.
Well, thank you both so much. This has been such a treat and an enlightening conversation. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Beyond the Bot. We'll be back next week with more conversations that go beyond the headlines and help you deliver real business value.